Hey everyone, this is Kristen at Flowers and Fancies, and I'm going to walk you through a simple arrangement that could be a lovely centerpiece or coffee table arrangement or gift for a friend using hydrangea as a base and flowers that are pretty much always available year-round, so you can always make something like this for your table or for a gift. We're going to start with the hydrangea. So what we found a long time ago at the flower shop is that taping takes forever and it's a pain, and not everyone's super good at it, and if the water gets underneath of it, it pulls off. So it wasn't the best. For delivering large parties that had hydrangea in them, we found what worked out really well was using the hydrangea itself as the grid. So we'll take a hydrangea or two, and you have to kind of size them to your container. This is a pot that we have available at the shop that you can order. It's also great for putting plants in, so when your flowers have expired, you can use this to put a plant in your house, which is great. This hydrangea we always have in stock. It is an autumn shaded two-tone hydrangea. This happens to be massive. Usually I would use maybe 3 in a pot like this. You might be able to get away with fewer. You might even be able to get away with 1. If you want your arrangement to be a little bit more loose and gardeny, then you could pull back on the amount of hydrangea that you use and add more greens into it to make it more lush. If you want to see more flowers and a little bit less of the foliage, you want to use a little bit more green of the hydrangea so that you can see it in between the flowers. And what's really nice about using the hydrangea is that it gives you color in between your flowers. I know it's green, but anyone that's received a flower arrangement from a flower shop that's been just jammed with greens to hold the stems in place knows that it makes the water dirtier, it's not as pretty, it's not as elegant looking. So this way we can be really strategic with where we place our greens so that they don't turn into a big hodgepodge, and it's much easier to keep the water clean. So I'm going to go ahead and use all 3 of these, even though they're massive. It makes a really big bouquet. I'm just going to make them into a kind of a ball in my hand, so you can see, like this, all the stems are together neatly. I'm going to take some raffia wire. So this is what we use at the shop all the time for making bouquets. You can also use tape or wax wire, whatever you have on hand. A lot of people have just regular spool wire around, so that can work too. The only thing with the spool wire is it could rust where the coating comes off, and what's nice about this is this, for the most part, keeps the wire from getting rusty, and it's a nice fine gauge wire, so it's easy to work with. So what I'm going to do is, where my hand is, I'm going to take my wire and just hold it with one finger and go around my stems twice, moving any of the foliage from the hydrangea that's in the way out of the way. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull it nice and tight so you can see both of my pieces are coming off in one direction. And you want to picture sort of like a twist tie that you have with a bag of bread, right? So you want to hold the stems pretty tight, and then you just want to twist it as best you can. It doesn't have to be a million times, maybe 3 twists is going to be fine. And then you're going to trim off your excess raffia wire. Now for arrangements like this, I'm going to add some greens, and I want it to be sort of loose and textured. So if I have pretty foliage on my hydrangea, I'm going to leave it just because it's going to create a little bit more of a grid for the other flowers to go into, and also because it keeps it sort of natural looking. But if you have any really big greens coming off of it, or anything that's coming across the bottom that's going to obstruct the stems from going into the base, you want to pull those off. So I'm going to trim a couple of these larger ones off, so it's a little bit cleaner on the bottom. And then I'm going to measure it to my vase and give it a trim. You're aiming for your stems to be almost at the bottom of the vase. You want to give yourself a little bit of room to trim them additionally, because when you change your water, you're going to want to give your stems a fresh cut. That way they'll drink up a little bit more and they will last longer for you. So I put this guy in. I can see, because he's sitting up a little bit, that he's a little too long. So I'm going to give it another little trim. It's best to be conservative when you're cutting. You can always trim more off, but you cannot add stem back on. I'm going to put this in like so. So basically this is going to be the base of our arrangement. To this, I'm going to add some of my more foundational greens. This is called lemon leaf. It's a standard foliage that you'll find pretty much anywhere, flower shops, grocery store, wherever. And it's a little bit larger, but what's nice about it is it mimics the foliage of certain garden flowers that are popular to use. So it looks kind of similar to the foliage on a rose. It looks kind of similar to the foliage on a hydrangea. So it sort of blends in nicely, and it helps create a little bit more of that nest to put the rest of the flowers in. So when you go to put this in, you want to put it in at a little bit of an angle. And I like to kind of think of it as spokes on a wheel. So as it's going around, I'm going to work these in between some of the spaces in the hydrangea. And again, if you put it in, it's too long, just pull it back out again and trim it a little bit shorter. And then just for another texture, I'm going to add another variety of green. It's kind of similar in color, but it's a little bit sturdier. And it is called Israeli ruscus, or Florida ruscus. And this is also readily available at flower shops. We stock it here all the time. It's great, it's super long lasting. It has just like a nice kind of waxy finish on it. So you can use this in two places if you like, or just use the tip. I'm gonna take a little bit of this off, give it a trim. So then I'm left with a nice long clean stem and the greens on top. Each time I cut, I'm cutting at an angle. A good clean chop is always better than breaking your stem. But if you give it a trim at an angle, it just increases that surface area that's open on the bottom of the stem, so it has a little bit more space to draw that water in and up the stem. Again, helping it keep your flowers lasting a bit longer. Now every time I add another stem to the vase, or to our pot, going in at an angle, it's beginning to make sort of like crisscross pattern around the area where we've tied the hydrangea, and that is going to make more and more and more of a grid, sort of like a bird's nest, so that when we get to adding our flowers, we can put them in and they'll stay put, and you don't have to worry about them sagging to the outside. So the goal right now is to build up a nice strong foundation. And I like to add some smaller hydrangeas too sometimes, especially if you have them in your garden. It's really fun to use. I've seen a couple of people, it's been a really good year for hydrangea, and I've seen a lot of really pretty petite hydrangea in people's yards that have gorgeous colors. So this would be a great place to bring them inside and show them off, just in addition to some of the other pieces. Again, you can leave your greens on if they're pretty, and if they're not so pretty, just take them off. And I have my arrangement in mind to be a centerpiece, so I'm just gonna make sure every time I turn it, I can see all of the components. If you're planning on putting this on like a credenza or side table, and you wanna maybe put some more of your flowers towards the side that it's going to be seen from, but since mine's going to be seen all around, I want to make sure that it's got a little bit of everything all the way around, so whoever's sitting at the table gets to see all of the pretty flowers. Okay, so the first flower I'm going to go in with is usually the largest flower. So in this case, it's going to be roses. Roses are available everywhere. So all I'm doing right now is just kind of gently opening it and taking off any petals from the outside that aren't particularly pretty. I should mention that the temperature of the water that you're using has a lot to do with that as well. Typically, to start, I'm going to fill my vase with like a little warmer than room temperature, like a lukewarm water. Flowers do like to drink warmer water. It goes up there, travels up their stem. And then the next rose that we're going to add is quicksand. Quicksand is one of my favorite all-time roses ever. I feel like it goes with everything. And it's very romantic. It's that nice blush color, and I feel like it acts like a nice median between other colors. And they have a great fragrance. They open up really pretty. So all I'm going to do is take the packing petals off of this, and then clean the stems off. I'm going to go ahead and put these in. And I'm kind of group them with my other roses, just to give a little more impact. I like to have a little texture, so ins and outs, you want sort of like a lumpy ball going on. I would say for like a container this size, maybe you can get away with probably as few as 6 roses would look nice. I'm doing 8 here. Again, if you're purchasing them someplace else, you're purchasing them by the bunch and you're getting 10, go ahead and use them. And then for my spurry roses, I like these because they're just like really pretty melon color. Hopefully they open nicely. Once we have a nice kind of foundation of roses going on, I'm gonna add a little bit of this alstroemeria, and I don't love alstroemeria, but it is super long lasting and it opens up really pretty, and this happens to be a really cool color. But I like to use it kind of as a green, so it's just like a green that has a little bit more interest to it. I'm just gonna tuck that in for a little more texture in my arrangement. I have these really lovely miniature callas that I'm going to use as sort of like my pot flower. A lot of times what we'll use here is like a cymbidium orchid or an orchid bloom in a tube that you can kind of sit in on top, and that can kind of be a show. As dahlias come into season, that's a really nice one to use also. Just something that's like seasonal that really kind of gives it a wow factor. But I put the rest of the stuff in first, and then I'll put those in later just so I have better control of where you're going to see them, since that's kind of the cool flower. And my hypericum. Now this is just gonna kind of clean all these leaves off the bottom. I love a berry in an arrangement for texture. This here, and also maybe some of those greens on the top helps bring that darker color in, which is nice. As you turn and look and you see a spot that needs something, or sort of a low spot, this is where you want to do your adjusting. Some of those greens from the first round that I put in are kind of sitting awkwardly, so I'm going to push those in a bit more. But once you have everything kind of in its place, that's when I usually add my like more delicate foliages. So in this case, I'm just going to add a little bit of this seeded eucalyptus because it just happens to be really pretty right now. We usually have seeded eucalyptus. Silver dollar eucalyptus is always really pretty too. It just has a bigger leaf on it, so it's a little bit tougher to tuck in. It looks better in usually larger arrangements. So I'm going to take a couple of these. So you can see a stem is like a bush, so you don't want to use it as it is. You have to take the individual pieces off and clean them up. Because again, you don't want any of these leaves to go down into your arrangement. It's such a fine stem, so it's really cool putting it in. But so I have that kind of coming out. And this is going to give me a little bit of some like downward drip, a little bit of fullness in front of the container. And right now in the shop we have this cool blooming oregano. It has quite a powerful aroma, but it's kind of fun, I think, to add herbs, especially if you're doing things for like your dining room table, just to kind of have that culinary accent. Okay, so here you go. Hopefully you've been inspired to create something on your own and get designing. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. For more inspiration and availability, visit flowersandfancies.com or call 410-653-0600 and follow along with us on Instagram and Facebook.